Hey guys, Adam, Hoosier Garage, and we're back again. And there's a project on one of the side projects on the van that I've been contemplating, and we're just kind of feeling it out. And I thought I'd let you in on it and see if this is something we could pull off. It might be a complete failure, but when I bought the '72 van back in December, the gentleman I purchased it from threw in a few extra things, and one of them was a sunroof. Okay, and that sunroof does have glass, and the cool thing about it is that it is a vintage sunroof. Has a little sticker on there we don't have to peel off, but it's got that mirror tinted privacy glass in it, and I would guess it's probably from the early 80s, but it looks kind of consistent in shape with one that you would see back in the 70s. So I was thinking about it. I thought this might be something cool, or I might sell it. I'm not sure yet. And I got to looking at it, and when I put the overhead console in, I thought, well, this might be cool, because usually you see them with the console. And the way it comes, the way it's, I guess, positioned, and the shape of the roof where you would usually put a sunroof on one of the early Dodges, it looks like it would just fit really nice. So, I got to looking at the sunroof. So that included the frame, and then the glass itself. But mainly the frame I was looking at, I'm like thinking, well, is this ready to go? And I was kind of looking at pictures because I'm not real familiar with this, especially the old sunroofs. They was just different. And new ones are all mechanical, and they all go inside the interior of your car. You don't see much. But these are a little bit more exposed. So I got looking at it, and I realized it's missing something. Maybe that's why the guy gave it to me. He didn't know what to do with it. And that would be this piece right here, this trim ring, which basically helps you sandwich it to the roof of the vehicle. Okay. Now, the brand that this is, and I'll show you. It's called Levin Skyport. And it's got his patent number, everything on it. And when you look up Levin Skyport, they are no longer in business. Apparently they started in the 70s and they probably ended in the 90s, best I can figure. So I got looking around on eBay, and somebody had one of these. It was a little bit newer version, maybe mid 1980s, and it was completely black, had black glass in it. It looked cool, but man, it was like $400. So I'm thinking, well, I got 90% of this one, so what do I need? And so I couldn't find the trim ring, and I asked some other people. They didn't know of any source of anything. So I found a brand online that had a, well, they called it Universal, but it fit their old brand. And I'm starting to learn about sizes, and this is a 15 by 30, and some of them are bigger, some of them are smaller or longer. And I realized this company called CRL, which is CR Lawrence, that's what the L stands for, has a brand, and they sell different rings. And I noticed on this ring, it had a nice long radius that seemed like it would match my sunroof. And what I could see in the stock photo, you know how stock photos are on Amazon and all these places, is that the holes looked like they was roughly in the same spots. So I thought maybe this is a direct fit. I don't know though. Wasn't quite sure. I took a gamble and ordered it, and it was like $55, and of course there was several dollars shipping, so by the time I got done it was about $70. And I thought, well, I hope it works. If it don't, I'll send it back. Well, I just got it about an hour ago, and I started playing around with it, and I realized there is a ridge on here, and that ridge runs right along here, and this is where your screws go through the trim ring and anchor into this. It's basically just like a wedge, kind of like this, and your screw goes inside of it. Okay, so all the way around. You can see where the previous ones had been. So there's a ring that goes over top of this, and my surmising is it probably came up flush with this little lip right here, and probably just went down and had the hole in it. But that is long gone. Probably when they took it out, either they didn't leave it with it or it got lost somewhere along the way. So it doesn't even exist as far as I know. So here's the other ring, and notice it is now in 4 pieces. And the reason it's in 4 pieces because when I laid it up here and lined it up, the holes was about 1/8 of an inch too far that way, and if you held it there, it was about 1/8 of an inch too far that way too. You probably could have went sideways, but that's getting a little hack to me. And you had pretty much the same thing here, and the difference from here to that side. So I thought, well, how can you remedy this? And I noticed that they had, much like this joint is here, see where they brought it all together and they flashed it together, and you know, it was all one piece here, all one piece, they just rolled it around. Same thing with this. So I cut it, and I think this is it, yeah. That is the original weld point where they welded it together. But then I made that that cut and that cut, and I placed one of the ring corners now on there, and it fit very good. I can run a screw right in that ridge, and if you notice, there's the ridge. Now over here, same thing. Here's the ridge. I know it's hard to see, but then that falls right down in there. Okay, and it's actually pretty consistent through here. The radius is almost exact. Maybe this is a little bit wider, but it fits and it squeezes down tight. So I laid my next piece on there, which would have been this long side piece, and I made sure that it lined up on that ridge. Okay, and then whatever I had overhanging here, I shaved it off with a grinder, and I took about 1/8 of an inch off, kind of like what I was talking about, and then just slightly smoothed it out both sides, which took off a little bit more, and then he was able to run your screws in on this one. And I just repeated this and went to the next one, and then trimmed off whatever edge looked like it needed it the most, and eventually got both of these on here. Okay, now is this an okay way to do it? Maybe not. This is somewhat of a structural piece since it holds it to the roof. So my thinking was, I don't want to epoxy this together, because you know, we need to put it back together and make it one piece, and you know, smooth it out and you know, touch it up with some black paint. So I remembered I have a buddy who did aluminum welding, and I contacted him and he said he still does it. So I'm waiting to hear back from him, and if we could set something up, I'll take the whole frame over there and maybe he could spot weld it back together the way it would set with all the screws, everything in place, and then we could take the screws out and he could weld it from the inside and get a good solid weld on it, and then I'll bring it home and touch it up again and see what we got. So that's where we're at on this, and I think it'd be really cool if we could put that guy, and notice the shape of it, up in here, and see how you have the ribbing that hangs down. It would pretty much go to where this light bracket is and go right up above here, and then you would have a couple latches that would go up, and you can either take up and down like that, or you can take it completely out and have an open sunroof. So the video that you just saw prior to this scene, that part of it was like May, I think May. At the earliest it was April, no later than May. But the plan was to get the frame that retains it on the inside, get that welded up, since we had to do all the trimming and all that. And some of this I'm just refreshing myself, so you just saw it in the video, but I'm like trying to refresh myself because that was months ago. And well, the fellow that I took it to has had absolutely no time whatsoever to weld the frame together. It could be done though. I've kind of determined that after months and months of thought and waiting and just kind of reading. I'm like, yeah, it could be done, but I've yet to find anybody that could do it. And before I have to learn myself to do it, like I do nearly everything else, it's Thanksgiving evening. I'm somewhat in a bad mood. I don't like the holidays anymore, which has determined that I am old. And what better time to make a big decision to cut a hole in your roof than when everything's just not right. So I've got a few things here that helped me figure this out. One cool thing about these Dodges is that the way the roof line is up here, or this indentation that goes around here, it's almost accepting of the shape of a typical sunroof. And this is like a 15 by 30 opening. And I took a template because, you know, this is an old sunroof. So I had to make my own since the old one, whatever was with it, is long gone. But I made it out of cardboard here. I centered it up inside of this indentation. Front, center, side, back, all that stuff. And then drew everything around it. And it's based off of the 15 by 30 overall. So you'll have your 15 here, cross, and it's consistent all the way down through there. And then our 30. Now, there's a little discrepancy in it. It'll be just a little bit over 30. I think they possibly go on the glass size that goes in it. That's the actual size of the sunroof. But, you know, you have to account for your frame and all that stuff. And this frame, it's kind of a complex looking piece, and you can see through there. This would be the side that fits down inside of the hole. So when you measure from there all the way across to the other side consistently up, you know, up here, here, and then down here, it comes out to 15 and an eighth. And like I said, consistently down through, that's what it is. So this one is at 15 and an eighth. Okay, now when you go across, like I said, it's supposed to be, you know, representative of like 30 inches. Make sure your tape doesn't slip. And that's 30 and an eighth. So same situation right here. 30 and an eighth. The radiuses, I just copied them off of this one. I can't remember how I did it, but it's not that hard. The only hard part of it is the actual piece that you want to get your cut measurement off of. It's kind of recessed, and you have this bumped out through here, and it makes it a little difficult to lay it down, move everything out of the way, because it's going to be that far off the board. So you can cut a template and just get your radiuses that way, if you don't have a template already. Just depends on what you got if you're using this old stuff. Now, one thing I did do, I polished all this. I sanded it, all the paint off of it, and then polished it, used mag wheel polish, and I went from started with 80, went down to 180, then 320, then 400, and then polished it with Mother's mag wheel polish, aluminum mag wheel. So it looks really pretty. It's kind of nice. I'm gonna put a new Weatherstrip in here, just generic, and replace what was flattened out and old in there. And then we'll have to get the outside frame welded. So I have it marked up here, up here. I have it marked up here, and I transferred it from this. And again, make sure you're level in there, or you're plumb. You're not too far this way and out. You know, be professional about it if you can. I'm gonna light this over here. And so we're just gonna do a double check. You know, always measure twice, cut once, that sort of crap. And if I just do a couple checks here. It's a little heavy there, I think. I'm gonna grab my pen. And I'd rather start out cutting exactly to where it might not actually fit down in there, and then just gradually shaving some of this off. Now, one of the idiotic things that I've done is paint the roof already. It's painted up on top. So I'm gonna go cutting a hole through it. But we're gonna show you how I like to preserve that area that gets basically cut loose and try to protect everything. So I got all the rags up here. And you know, these are just towels, and you don't want to get sparks on them and catch it on fire, but it shouldn't concentrate on any of this. So just keep that in mind. So we're good right here. And this is, I'm just gonna reaffirm all this. It's a little sloppy right there, whatever line I was trying to achieve. I'm just going to hold this back up here, reestablish what we need, get directly under it, find your marking. Okay, so here's what I'm going to do. It's a little unsure in some spots, so instead of trying to go back over and over and over and trying to remember everything, I'm going to run a piece of frog tape down through here. You can put it on either side, inside of the cut or the outside. I think we'll go with the outside. And just make a definite type of situation here. Get the whole flat part of it there. Now this side over here where the ribs are, they will, you'll have to go over the ribs. Try to account for all of that. About that long. Front slide, so I'll have to go up on top of the dome white bracket. And I'm just following where my pencil line is. So. Now, back here, we got a brace that goes down through here. That's going to be parallel. That's based on the engineering of the vehicle. That's going to be pretty, or parallel with, or perpendicular, I should say, with the length of the vehicle. So we're pretty even down through there. So over here, tighten it up a little bit, about there. Okay, there's 15 and 1/8. That's what we want here. This just trails off. Okay. Now down here, you want that same thing. We're just kind of restarting it. Make sure to double check here. And this should, if you keep the tape nice and even on there, should follow along pretty good. There. Yep. It's like a heavy 15 and 1/8. But the thing is, as long as I'm consistent on both from this end and this end here, that's okay. I'm going to cut on the inside and I'll just be conservative on what I cut out. I won't cut the line itself or the tape. The tape should be able to come away uncut. Let's say it that way. So I'll cut up here on the inside of it, all the way around. But we just got to make sure that we are double checking that it's all where it needs to be cut. So it's looking pretty consistent here. On the heavy side of 15 and 1/8. Consistently so. This way is even. really good fit. I thought the radiuses would need to be kind of trimmed out after we cut this because it just seemed like they was too far in. So that's the benefit of keeping it a little conservative, because as it turns out, it was actually spot on, except for right here. You saw me kind of trimming this little, right in the center of the radius. It was when you go to compress the ring down into the body, it was it has a little bit of a taper right here, and it was pressing into it. And as I pull it down all the way around, that was the only spot I had. You'll look up here, and you'll see a little bit of a gap around it, but that's just because it needs to be fully installed. And so come out pretty good. I'm going to go through it and probably put the glass in and just see what it looks like, because I have no clue what it looks like in like a finished closed up state. So there's a good look at it. We'll have to trim and clean up some of the metal and the paint there around the edge where the cutting wheel went through, but that's, I expected that. All right, so working on the old frame here that is still in pieces. I noticed when I took this one up here, and when I set it up against the ceiling and grabbed the frame and brought it down, that there was an extra large gap between itself and the sunroof frame. I would say 1/4 of an inch, 3/8 of an inch, something like that. So, well, that has to be remedied. And either way, the screw was not long enough to even grab. So I thought, okay, that has to be changed. So this is the actual thickness of the frame, as it were. And when I measured the difference between the gap from here, actually where it sets up against the roof and where it needed to be, I noticed that, and that might be why this is engineered this way. See these two grooves in here? Well, it went to the very top one here. So I took this one right here, and if you look at the profile on the end of it, it is much different than the other one. So basically this top groove above that was cut off. And this is aluminum again, and it cuts off very nicely with a one of the thin metal cutting wheels. And it fits up in there really nice and snug against here, very even all the way around. And so I'm going to go ahead and modify the other ones to fit this. I know right here that we'll have to make a provision for that, as well as possibly even behind here. You can't see it, but there's another one in there. It's like the little tip of it, and then the equal one on this side. Then it just goes around and it's all smooth. So I'm going to get that in place, and I'll show you how that comes out. And so far as I tightened 2 of these screws down, it's fitting pretty flush so far. And again, this will get a seal underneath it, and we'll go through that later. But we just wanted to get to set nice and flush against the roof to where it looks perfect. See our seam, or our kind of the relative distance from this to the edge. It kind of comes in close on this corner as well. It does that corner and out in the middle. So it's centered in there really good. I really like that. It looks really nice with that polished frame. And yeah, I need to pull that old sticker off there, because that's just a weird place for it anyway. So okay, so doing a little work out here in the shop, basically doing a little late fall cleaning so we can have a nice happy area to work out of. I pushed the van out here, and another reason I want to get the van out here so we can see how the light looks through this old school sunroof. And you see here, it's kind of a muted look. It's not too bright. Obviously, when you get around here where the sun comes through, you get a good beam of it, which I will make a panel to cover that up on times where you really want darkness up there. But you got it there. So I really like it. I think it looks, it really gives it a certain character. Really cool. And one of the things we need to solve on it is the Weatherstrip seal for the glass. Now, I took the old one out. It was pretty flattened out. The seal surface, like the skin of it, had eroded. And I will show you kind of what I lucked into. And if you look, this Weatherstrip channel, it's higher on this side. This is the top corner of it, and this side is a little lower. Now, if you look at this Weatherstrip, I have kind of test fit in there right now. Here's the profile of it, okay? Now, this is just a piece of scrap that I had from a previous project. And what project that was I had an 81 Camaro that I restored and put an LS 5.3 in it. But when I did the trunk rebuild on it, and I went and bought a new paint seal, trunk seal for it, this was it. And they give you quite a bit extra so you can trim it to fit and all this stuff. So this is what I had left, and I always keep this stuff for just, little things, kind of like this. You might need it for something. And it happened that I had this and another little thin one that wasn't even close to this. And if you stick this down in there, and I think you can kind of go different ways with it. You can either leave one side high here, one side low. We'd probably like to have this bottom here, where my finger's rubbing it, have that down in the bottom. And when this glass sets down, it pushes this down against it. So then you get this really good seal. The old one came up just underneath this, so this one actually comes up higher. So you get a little bit tighter seal if you can clamp it down. And it does clamp down where it's at. So I cut this piece in half to where we have this one, and I got one up here in the front, but I don't have any around the side. So what I did, I went ahead and ordered a new trunk seal for a Firebird and Camaro. And obviously it's a lot longer, and I'll just cut it to fit inside of this. I'll take the glass back out and we'll fit it in here. And then we'll use the Weatherstrip glue, which sometimes they call it Gorilla Snot, and we'll glue it in probably 2 spots. I think I'll probably do around here on the outer rim, and then below the surface here to where you don't see it. And then I will put some in the very bottom. Any tweaking besides that, we'll decide. It might need some on the inside, but the way it sits down here, see, it just looks pretty good. And it almost like it's almost made for it. I keep saying almost, but it's almost made for it. And of course, when you go to clamp this thing down, it has a nice seal to it. And if you get it all the way around where it encapsulates this area, then you'll get rid of that wobble to it. And plus, I need to tighten these. I'm going to put a couple new rubber washers in there to reseal that. These are a little tough. You got to be able to knock these pins up, but the pins are very tight in there. And with it being on glass, I don't want to create some adverse situation where you go break them. So we'll see what we got there. This is holding pretty good, although, like I said, it needs to be welded together, but we could probably compromise it. In some cases, if you don't want to mess with this, you can probably use a nice piece of hardwood, make a template, and then use a router and cut kind of a rabbit edge around the inside of it, and you can drill holes in the wood and then screw it up in there. And I'm not even ruling that out as being ultimately what we would do here, but so far this is working. We just need to get it, attached properly. And if you do use some hardwood, make sure it doesn't have any knots in it, because any twist in it could snap it. But you definitely want to use hardwood, not a piece of pine or anything. Other than on the dust and the dirt, there's a good look at it, top and bottom.